G'day YouTube, welcome back to another video. I was out testing TRX4M and its new crawl transmission yesterday. I had to buy the crawl transmission as the gears are super hard to find at the moment. It doesn't look like they'll be shipping gears out until mid-February. I was able to secure a crawl transmission, so I went ahead and dropped that in. It's quick and easy, 6 screws to replace it. I got about halfway through a battery pack yesterday with the intention of testing the vehicle out and then getting some crawl footage for it, and the stock servo shredded the plastic gears completely. You can't get replacement plastic gears for it. Traxxas will sell you an upgraded metal gear servo for $45, which doesn't have any better specs in terms of speed and power than the stock one. It's just a metal gear upgrade. So I was able to run out to my local HobbyTown USA and pick up this Ecopower 640T. I fitted it last night after getting back from the hobby store. I didn't do an install video on it because I thought it was going to be a quick drop-in replacement, and it almost is. Some plastic needs to be shaved off the front and rear edges of the servo mounting cradle. The casing of the 640T is about 1 millimeter longer than the stock servo. So once you shave that plastic off, it does drop in there. Output spline is 25 tooth, which is the same as the stock servo, so you can retain the stock servo horn, which is awesome. I did notice that if I tighten these screws all the way down snug, the top of the servo horn, or the end of the servo horn, will actually bind on the top of the axle casing there. So the total height of the Ecopower 640T is actually a little taller than the stock servo. So I had to back these screws off a bit just to allow a very slight amount of clearance there so that nothing was binding up. But after doing that, it is working great. Speed and power is excellent. And I'm going to move over to some driving footage that I took this morning so we can see what the speed and power of the servo is like, how does it perform, and how is the vehicle in basically stock form, apart from the crawl gears, the servo, and the IROC Super Swampers, and the Enduro wheels. Alright, I'm going to try something a bit different. Instead of having a microphone aimed at the truck, I'm wearing the microphone, so we'll see how filming and recording and everything works at the same time. I'm not very good at filming and driving, so it definitely takes a bit of practice. This thing is so much better with the crawl gears installed, at least the way I like to drive it. Now that we've got the new steering servo fitted to replace the factory Traxxas one that died, it seems considerably stronger. Specs wise, it said it was double the speed and torque of the stock servo. This thing's a little bit of a challenge to drive on our course with that big body, and the diff clearance is not as good as what I'm used to. But you can actually crawl this thing now that it has the low gearing in it, whereas before you had to bump up everything. You just didn't have that low down torque. Still a little bit tail heavy. This thing's stock other than the crawl gears, the replacement steering servo to replace the one I killed yesterday. and the wheels and tyres obviously, but otherwise no weights on it, everything else is stock. So we're definitely going to need to get some weight up front to help this thing along, but I'm surprised at how capable it is with those crawl gears installed. It's just a lot nicer truck to drive, and I think replacing the included bushings with bearings will smooth out the drivetrain even more. I've got some bearings on the way from CCXRC. He does a good job over there with his store, and the price on those bearings is right, so he's sending some of those over to me. But this thing, I just love the way this thing looks on the rocks. I think the amount of suspension travel is just about right for a scale truck. Definitely a learning curve, getting used to that diff clearance, but if you have a look, if we can get it right, the way it pivots around this section here, see if we can, that's just epic the way that it can, I think it can descend that section better than probably any of our other trucks. Everything's pretty slick. It rained really heavily, not yesterday but the day before, so it's hard grabbing traction on these rocks. This section's particularly difficult, trying to get this rear tyre to hook up over that rock there. It can be done, but the wheel position's got to be just right, and you can see how tail heavy it still is. Don't think it's going to make it up there. With wet tyres at the moment, it's a pretty challenging section. See if we can save it there. There we go. The way this thing drives with the crawl gears is epic. You can just sort of ease it along really, really well. We've got the ESC in crawl mode, which with the stock gearing, the drag brake, even in the crawl mode, wasn't that fantastic, but with the lower gearing, the drag brake is epic. It holds on the steepest of hills now. How tight that steering is probably one of our most maneuverable trucks at this stage. I was a little disappointed when the stock steering servo died, because for a stock servo it did pretty well. It wasn't the torquiest thing, but it performed pretty decently. Just try and showcase a few of the tougher obstacles so you guys can see how this thing performs. I've had to move some of the rocks around so that this thing doesn't hang up on the bumper. Like right here, that bumper just has a really tough time. You really do have to work it carefully around that front bumper. despite the slightly rearward weight bias, this thing doesn't do too bad on the climbs. Struggling a bit for traction here. But it has made it up here before. I'm surprised. These IROC tyres do pretty damn well. There we go. Sometimes it's hard getting the front to bite to pull the whole truck up. Those RC four-wheel drive IROCs hook in there pretty damn well. That's on the stock foams too. I love watching it pivot around that section. Even on some of the tighter obstacles that we've set up when we only had SCX24s, this thing doesn't do too bad. That body clearance is definitely a challenge, but I think that makes it more fun. The suspension seems to be really well set up. I haven't put any additional oil in the shocks. It sounds like from the factory that the shocks are a little bit low on oil. You can hear as they operate, you can sort of hear that squishing sound of air being in the oil. So I'll probably at some stage have to pull those apart and just top them off. I'm not really sure what weight of oil to use, something fairly light. Leave a comment below, let me know what you guys use. A lot of people complain about that stock ESC. I think it's doing a pretty good job. It's very, very smooth with the crawl gears in. It is a little bit whiny, but I mean, for the price you can't have everything, I guess. That big bumper gets in the way there, but it makes it more challenging, I think. Means that you can't just go over everything. You really have to be careful with picking your lines. We'll see if we can approach from this side, and we'll come over the little articulation bridge that we've got set up. It's a little bit narrow. A little bit narrow for the FCX24. It's super wide. It can do it, but it's hit and miss. But this thing with the stock, I guess it's a little bit narrower on these RC four-wheel drive tyres with the Enduro rims. It might be a couple of millimeters narrow, but it doesn't seem too bad. It makes it over there pretty well in the slow crawl. Just gives you a ton of control. And then coming out the other side here, the turning radius is just epic. Like the FCX24 can't do this in one move as easily. You might see me cutting the video to reposition a lot. It's super tight back here in our garden. It just started off as a garden path with a few rocks thrown next to it. And we're just slowly but surely expanding the course. think at the moment the turning radius is probably my favorite aspect of the truck, along with the awesome scale looks. This is a pretty crazy line that our FCX24 and our axial trucks can do, but this one might be a little bit too bulky to do it. It might be hampered by the diff and bumper clearance there, but the other trucks can come up there and get into that position, not easily, but with a little bit of bumping and positioning. That low speed control is super awesome. Still got just enough wheel speed to bump it up if you need to. You're not going to be launching up any really big inclines like you can in second gear with the FCX24. But I think the trade-off of having that epic slow crawl is worth it. It's a little bit of a handful to film everything. I've got my phone mounted to the transmitter with a GorillaPod tripod. I've got wires everywhere for the microphone, so it's a little bit of a challenge. The width of this little ramp here was originally set up for the SCX24s. You can see that this truck fits it pretty nicely. I really want to set up a winch for this thing. It's got that cool bumper with the fair lead already molded in there, and I think with the weight of this truck, it's pretty heavy. I don't think a retractable winch like we have set up on our other trucks will do the trick. I think it needs to be a servo based winch, so I want to see if I can come up with a micro servo that's been modified and turned into a winch. I'm not sure how I would control it because the included electronics only have 2 channels, but definitely think it would be cool to have this set up with an actual functional winch. When I first drove the truck with the included gearing, I wasn't very impressed at all. But putting the crawl gearing in there really opens up a lot of options. That's where we're going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully my ramblings as I was trying to concentrate on framing the video and talking and driving. I'm not very good at multitasking, so hopefully that wasn't a complete disaster. It was good to finally get some running with the truck, with the crawl gears, and with that new servo. I was hoping, I didn't mind the performance of the stock servo. It was a little low on torque, but it did a pretty decent job of steering the truck around, and I was quite happy to leave it in there for as long as it lasted. But As it turns out, I only got probably all up probably a battery and a half worth of crawling out of that stock servo. So that was kind of disappointing, but it was awesome that my local HobbyTown had a replacement, the Ecopower 640T, which fits in, as you saw, with a little bit of modification, but it really does, it's definitely an upgrade over the stock. It's spec sheet wise, it's double the speed and torque, and I would have to tend to agree with that. Driving it around, it feels really decent. So hopefully the audio quality and my ramblings didn't spoil the video too much. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions, or any experiences with your own TRX4M, and I'll catch you on the next video.